vagina.
A trans with a Schmendrick swinging it in a girl's bathroom.
Is it time?
It is time for us to do what we have been doing, and that time is every day.
We'll know in a very short period of time, but it looks like it could be something that will be not good. Believe me, not good.
I see issue with that. And again, hey.
You're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen.
I don't know who created Pokemon Go. But I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
I'm Ted Cruz, and my pronoun is kiss my ass.
So when you think about it, there is great significance to the passage of time in terms of what we need to do to lay these wires, what we need to do to create these jobs.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was going to put him.
Not good. Believe me, not good.
Well, what's up, everyone? A pleasant good morning. Friday, September 1st. Early start to a Labor Day weekend. It is a pleasant 57 degrees up here in the capital region of New York State. I got my hoodie on for the first time this season. Keaton Weiss here with the muted Russell Davuler, who will become unmuted in 1 second.
Dobre ultra. Oh, good morning.
Yeah, there we go. Indeed. Yes, it is nice and cool this morning up here. I don't know what it's like down there, but there's no better feeling than the early fall. You know, that first feeling of the fall air is so fantastic. I love it so much.
I do. It was really beautiful that way yesterday. Oh, yeah, it's 65 degrees here. Yeah, yesterday was like that, but I'm not really gonna get to experience much of that.
No, you're missing. Well, no, I mean, by the time it's really autumn in New York, it's like early
when I get back, it'll be.
So you'll be back.
Yeah, it'll be crisp.
It'll be crisp
by the time I get back.
Hoodie weather. I love hoodie weather. Yes, Dave Dillerai says in the chat, hoodie weather. Love it. My favorite time of the year. And now that I'm, 90 miles north of where I used to live, I get more of that time of year. So that's a lot of fun. It's still T-shirt weather, though, in New York City, apparently, because Russell has a very interesting T-shirt. Go ahead. Beautiful. Look at that T-shirt. That was made for us by Eileen Johnson and her husband, Scott. So thank you guys very much. She gave it to Russ at the Jimmy Dore show.
They were at the Jimmy Dore show. I have one for you for when we see each other at some point. The universe doesn't like that. We're convinced there's going to be a quantum singularity if we get together because the universe always makes sure it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I know. It always throws something in the way, but I will get my hands on it sooner or later. But yes, really, really cool fan art. So thank you.
Thank you very
Scott
much.
and Eileen. That's really awesome of you guys. We just noticed a couple people in the chat saying, do you guys ever sleep? Yeah, we did the old clopen. In retail, they would call it a clopen. You close the night before, and then you open the store the next morning. We did our second Patreon and paid Substack subscriber exclusive show of the month last night. Fun time was had by all. We had a really nice crowd in there for that one. So thank you guys all very much for being there and signing up and supporting the show. And I hope we made it worth your while. We have a bunch of stuff to cover today on this Friday morning, this beautiful Friday morning. But why don't we start out with a book recommendation, shall we?
All right. So there's a surprise book recommendation. I'm giving you a bonus book recommendation because I felt like to give you a probably out of print, very difficult to find book alone would be kind of, cheating. All right. But this is the out of print one. I have mentioned I like to read these out of print, old secondhand bookshop books from the 60s and 70s because very often they have an unvarnished, raw take on the events of that period that you're not going to get from something that's written now. And a lot of, very often it'll have information that's gone down the memory hole. So this is a pretty good example. This is called The CIA and the Cult of Intelligence. This was co-written by a 15-year CIA veteran and a veteran of the State Department who had turned journalist. And they actually had to go to the Supreme Court and sue to get this published because the CIA argued that the family secrets he was giving away, he did not have a right to disclose. So it's very interesting, actually, in the book. There are a lot of sections with redacted notes and things like that. So if you really want to go down the rabbit hole, this is a fun one with a lot of detail about the history of CIA shenanigans that you're not likely to find in a contemporaneous source and a source written now. But because Tucker's over there in Hungary, which I would say as a nation is probably most articulating and kind of trying to present a counterpoint to a lot of the liberal critique of the West. I have mentioned this book on the show before, but I think it was pre-recommendation. So if you want to understand what Viktor Orbán and Tucker Carlson are talking about in these interviews, what the core theory they're presenting, what their core critique of the woke narrative about the West and the history of the West is. The War on the West by Douglas Murray articulates where they're coming from very well. If you want to understand Orbán, if you want to understand Hungary, if you want to understand, to a large extent, Tucker, you really can't do better than this. War on the West by Douglas Murray.
I thought you should recommend a cookbook since we're going to be talking about Hungary.
Oh, fuck, man. You see that's where really Keaton is the older one, because
try on the older one.
He's a dad.
I get,
and if there was ever a dad joke, you ever hear me making those dad jokes?
Well, I tell you what, I'll give you another one.
Having kids ages you, man. Like Keaton is like 20 years older than me from having 4-year-old twins.
That's right. That's right. Sometimes I get the countries Hungary and Turkey mixed up because thinking about Turkey makes me hungry.
Do you know how much I hate jokes like that?
Week.
Like everyone who knows me, like if they just want to make me cringe, they do puns on me.
That's
because they know how I'm gonna react.
That's actually not untrue. Like I sometimes do get Hungary and Turkey mixed up for exactly that reason.
Do you really?
Yeah,
well, just one more example of how qualified you are to do a current event show.
Well, their presidents kind of have similar sounding names, right? It's Erdogan, Orban. It's kind of sounds similar, right? So sometimes I get them mixed up. I made sure not to for the sake of this show because that would make us look pretty fucking stupid. But I think I'll have that straight by the time we get to that. That's going to be the last thing we do. We're not going to start off that heavy, though. We're going to start out light, folks. It's Friday morning. It's an AM show. We like to do some lighthearted, fun stuff on the AM shows.
Look, we're losing subscribers because of that already.
Oh, yeah?
We just lost like 23 subscribers.
Yeah, exactly. Back under 12K. Back down to 11.8.
We're very big in Turkey.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
we're even bigger in Hungary.
Right. I know. All right, folks. So let's get out in front of the day with a little bit of fun stuff here. I don't know if you saw this headline. This is quite the headline. This is only in America. Won't see this in Turkey, Hungary, Europe. This is a truly American headline from the American heartland in Nebraska. U.S. driver pulled over with huge African bull riding shotgun in car.
I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I can drive down the highway with an African bull.
And only get off with a warning, as we'll see. That's hilarious. Converted vehicle stopped in Nebraska with gigantic horned Watusi bovine called Howdy Doody as passenger. So he has a name. Apparently this bull is a bit of a local legend where this man is from. Police in Norfolk, Nebraska, responding to calls of a man driving with a cow in his car, were stunned to discover a local man with a huge Watusi bull riding shotgun in his vehicle. Quote, the officers received a call referencing a car driving into town that had a cow in it, Captain Chad Ryman told News Channel Northeast Nebraska. They thought that it was going to be a calf, something small, something that would actually fit inside the vehicle. In fact, the animal was a Watusi bull, a breed of cattle famous in Africa with gigantic horns. The driver was identified as Lee Meyer of nearby Neeli, and police performed a traffic stop on his car. Meyer told him that the Watusi bull's name was Howdy Doody. The officer wrote him some warnings, Ryman told the TV channel. There were some citable issues with that situation. Yeah, you think? The officer chose to write him a warning and asked to take the animal home and leave the city. Meyer, whose car appeared specially outfitted to have a bull as a passenger, promptly did. That's pretty lenient of the police to let you off with a warning. What does it take to get a ticket? Well, you got to roll Noah's Ark through the highway to get a ticket there? All right, we'll let you off with a warning for cutting half of your car off and putting a bull where the rest of the car should be with a 9-foot horn span? I mean, what if a car comes in the other lane? I mean, it's incredible. That's amazing. And we have some video of the event, too, that we'll show you in a second.
This is why I wanted to do this for the Friday show, because we have all of our overseas viewers on Friday mornings because it's afternoon there. So we criticize America a lot on this show. It's kind of the nature of the show. I wanted to show them what's great about America. I wanted to show them why we're, in a lot of ways, come on, I mean, we're better than you. You try doing that in Yorkshire, they're gonna put you in jail for a hate crime.
Yeah.
Right? In America, you just get a warning.
Get a warning.
I bet whoever called the police was European.
Yeah, right. A snitch.
Right? Like, what American would call
rat.
the police about such a glorious event?
Yeah. Here it is. Here's some news coverage.
Responded to a call of a man driving eastbound on 275 with a Watusi bull in his passenger seat.
Wow.
You do this in China? They take your kidneys and sell them on the black market.
Town that had a cow in it.
I want you to look at this car too. Look.
Like a calf.
Yeah, it's got it tricked out, man.
Fit inside the vehicle.
And the vehicle was big enough. Well, technically.
As a result, the officer performed a traffic stop and addressed some traffic violations.
Look at there's shit all over the back of the car. Bullshit's on the car.
I didn't even catch that.
Yeah. There's crap all over the back of the car while the car's driving.
I mean,
down
there
the road.
would be, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, why wouldn't there be?
It looks like they've been feeding this thing some fudge rounds or something.
Yeah. Out there in the heartland, the exits are far apart. So, yeah, I mean, the bull's going to have to go at some point.
Meyer of Neely. The Watusi bull's name was Howdy Doody. He was immediately pulled over by Norfolk police, and they performed a routine traffic stop.
The officer wrote him some warnings. There were some citable issues with that situation. The officer chose to write him a warning and ask him to take the animal back home and to leave the city.
Meyer and Howdy Doody are on their way back home, and no one was hurt.
No one was hurt. All's well that ends well. The bull seems happy, you know.
Yeah, the
it's
bull's
probably
just
nicer
chilling.
for the bull to ride with the owner
yeah.
than put him in a trailer that rattles back and forth.
Right,
you know what I mean? Hey, you got me.
He's got the wind in his face.
He can adjust the stereo.
Born free.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So listen, we have our fun at the expense of our native land, but it's still the greatest country on earth.
Yeah, that's only in America. That's a truly American story.
That
right
is
there.
an only in America story. Any other country, you'd get put in a re-education camp.
Yeah, to take a bull down the highway. Indeed. Sold Out says, very cool. I'd wear a DD shirt for sure. Yeah, we're going to bring our merch store online very, very soon. That is coming up very, very shortly.
And we are planning on including this option.
Of course. How could we not? Taddy Mason over on Rumble gave us a Rumble rant this morning. Says, I just searched locals and saw you guys made one. I signed up. Thanks for making one. Yeah, we did make one.
I didn't know we made one.
Yeah, I haven't really done much with it yet because I'm a little puzzled how to use it. But now that you
it's
signed up,
basically the Patreon alternative. Right?
it's basically it's a Patreon alternative. It links up to Rumble, and so we're looking forward to exploring it and using it more. Now that we have someone signed up on locals, I'll make it a point to get that up and running, which is a good time to sign up.
You are an army of one, Taddy.
You are our only locals member right now. But it's the first of the month, so it's a good day to sign up because now I have all month to figure it out, so I'll get you the same perks that the patrons and the paid Substack subscribers get. So thank you guys very much for signing up. We got a couple super chats that we'll read in a moment. Tip jar is out, folks. Super chats are super helpful. They are what make these morning shows possible, so thanks very much. And please hit that like button if you have not already. We got to juice the algorithm
to Nemo here
on Friday mornings.
They would be down with that in Ireland. All right, man. Well, you know what? We're going to test that theory. We're going to bring a fucking bull to Ireland. And
how are the
drive down
roads in Ireland? Are the roads wide enough? You need big, wide American roads for a bull, too. You know, some of those rolling, some of the, the Irish countryside with the narrow roads that I've seen.
They do have those
that
narrow,
could be dangerous.
Roads.
Yeah. You need a big
could wind up
highway
spearing
80.
a sheep.
You need a nice interstate to roll that bull down, get in the left lane or you would get in the right lane if he's in the passenger seat. This way he's got the shoulder for his horn span. So, you don't clip a pickup truck as it passes you in the left lane. That's important. So maybe in terms of your attitude, you would allow the bull there. But do you have the infrastructure for a Watusi bull
that's
in the passenger
problem.
seat of a car? That's the question.
That's the problem. This is the only country great enough to both let you drive down the highway with an large African mammal and to have the infrastructure to accommodate that. Right?
Right. Exactly.
That's why I'm proud to be an American.
Right, exactly. Indeed. All right, here's another piece of news that is supposed to be funny. It's not as funny as the bull. There's no real topping the bull. Certainly these guys can't top the bull. This is a trailer to a new podcast that dropped, I guess, yesterday or the day before, called Strike Force 5. The premise of which is that 5 late-night comedians on the main networks, CBS, NBC, ABC, have banded together during the writer's strike when they're not on the air to do a podcast from their homes. Now, I do want to mention at the outset, because at first I heard that these late-night hosts, Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Fallon, Seth Meyers, John Oliver, a couple others, as we'll see in the piece here, I thought it was quite scab-like of them to do a podcast while their shows were off the air. Isn't that a betrayal of the writers? Well, to their credits, kind of, they are donating the proceeds of this podcast to the writing staff. And not just the writing staff, but I guess to the staff of the show who is out of work now because of the writers' strike. That's the good news. The bad news is I doubt there are going to be much proceeds because this doesn't look like something that's going to generate a whole lot of interest. Let's take a look at the trailer for Strike Force 5.
Yeah.
Hi. One more time, Jimmy.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Jimmy Fallon. I'm
Oh,
Stephen Colbert.
I'm Jimmy Kimmel. I thought when you said Jimmy, you meant me, Jimmy, but you meant Jimmy.
I always mean you.
That's hilarious. What a hilarious joke. That brings out the dad in me. Get it? They're both named Jimmy. So when he said, say it again, Jimmy, Jimmy Fallon started talking, and Jimmy Kimmel thought he was supposed to talk. Get it? This is going to be a great show. What a great show.
These are the jokes. These are the jokes.
That's the trailer-worthy joke.
It's almost like 5 guys who, on the rare occasion that they say something funny, owe it all to people who write the words for them, are trying to do a podcast where they're funny on their own.
Right.
It's
They have no
almost like
writers.
that.
That's what they should have done. That's an excellent idea. What they should have done, they should have paid the writers out of pocket to write material for the podcast. Right? This way the writers would make more money because they'd just be guaranteeing them a certain salary. These guys have an average net worth of about $60 or $70 million, so they can afford it, right? Give the writers some money, and then
are the
maybe
writers
set
allowed?
aside money for the crew and the staff and everything.
Are they allowed, because it's a podcast? Are they allowed to write for it?
I would imagine. I mean, it's a podcast. It's not TV or
for the same reason they can do it.
Right, for the same reason they could do it. They're in a performance union
Sure.
as well. These guys
Actually,
are
you
all
make
in
a good
SAG.
point.
Right, these guys are all in SAG-AFTRA, which is on strike as well, right? So really, they can't appear on TV. I guess they could do a podcast. So why not hire the writers to write you some material so that you're not featuring as the joke number 1 in your trailer? Okay, Jimmy, go ahead. Oh, Jimmy Fallon and Jimmy Kimmel both talked at the same time because they're both named Jimmy. Even dad that I am, I think that joke's a little lame. But let's keep watching. And there's a great observation that Russell caught that I did not catch, which he'll make as we see the locales of all of these hosts.
But when you say Seth Meyers, who do you mean?
I mean John Oliver.
It's the 5 of us together.
All right, yeah. Colbert. That's the guest bedroom that he keeps for his junkie third cousin.
Yeah, so here's
when
the
the junkie
locales.
third cousin needs a place to stay, that's where Colbert sticks him. They all and we should feel good about this because it shows that they are acknowledging that dirtbags like us are a lot cooler than multimillionaires like them because they're trying to make their shows look like our shows.
Right. So the good observation that Russell had, you could see here, John Oliver, Seth Meyers, Jimmy Kimmel, Stephen Colbert, and Jimmy Fallon. These guys are all worth tens of millions, and they all have luxurious apartments and or mansions and homes. Yet, look at all the backgrounds to all this room. You got John Oliver in a room that looks like my room when I first moved in and didn't put up the high school yearbook backdrop.
And he
you got
can't sit.
Seth Meyers.
And did he purposely frame it like this? Like, oh, look how untechnical I am.
Right,
I
look
don't
how
even know
amateur.
how to frame myself.
Right. I had way too much headroom there, obviously. Then you got Seth Meyers in a dark room with nothing on the walls. Jimmy Kimmel looks like he's in an attic. Looks like there's like plywood behind him. Colbert has the nicest background. Like you said, looks like a guest bedroom, or that may even be a hotel room. Looks like there are 2 beds in there. And then Fallon looks like a squatter in a garage or something. Like they're clearly...
The second bed is for the bull.
Yeah, right, exactly, yeah. They are very, very obviously trying to downplay the fact that they are uber rich and that the writers and the crew of the shows are, falling on hard times now. Very, very clearly a choice that I missed. Russell caught that. I didn't.
Yeah, they're also trying to hide the fact that they're completely out of touch libs. I want to be nice to the writers, but at the end of the day, how hard is it to say Orange Man bad? I mean, can't you even do that? Right. Can't you even do that right? You really need somebody to write that for you? But all of their shows have collapsed. Late night has collapsed. I mean, some of I think Fallon's show is down 50% from when he took over. Partly that is shifts in viewing habits, to be fair. But partly that is that their shows are unwatchable for anybody who is not just such a foaming at the mouth victim of Trump derangement syndrome that for years on end, they are going to get some kind of satisfaction out of watching a show where there are no jokes other than Trump jokes and jokes about people who don't want to take a vaccine, right?
Right.
Like, who wants to watch that? Who wants to
exactly.
watch that?
No, like the libs now have no sense of humor either. So even if you're making good Trump jokes, at a certain point, you know, it's going to exhaust itself because these libs don't really enjoy laughing. They don't like to laugh. They don't like being surprised. They don't like being challenged in any way. And yeah, I think that combined with the fact that the medium is really growing obsolete. I mean, Letterman used to be a thing. You'd wait for it at the end of the day. You'd stay up for it. I mean, I wouldn't because I was too young for it when they were really in their prime. But like, you know, my parents would stay up and they would watch the late show. You know, you'd wait for it at the end of the day before you go to sleep, and it would be a thing. You'd be there to watch it. Now you don't have to do any of that because it's all on YouTube. It's all online. There's podcasts.
You'll watch
and everything.
clips tomorrow.
Right. You'll watch clips tomorrow when they surface. So it's just kind of this obsolete medium here. And combined with the fact that they don't deliver anywhere near a good product. I mean, the closest thing to a good product was the John Oliver show, but even he's jumped the shark a long time ago. Colbert was a talented performance artist on The Daily Show, but once he showed who he really is, he's far less interesting than the rest of them.
Right.
Like, I think Colbert is probably the worst of these guys, actually.
He should have just stuck to the character.
Yeah,
he should have just kept doing the Colbert Show character forever.
Exactly.
You did not benefit yourself by showing us what you really think and who you really are.
Exactly. Let's watch the rest of this.
Together for maybe an hour a day.
Strike Force 5 is the name of our podcast. Subscribe to it now.
Spotify or wherever else you get your podcasts.
But Spotify, you fucks.
So I guess maybe they got a special,
hilarious. He cursed,
special arrangement.
He
with
cursed
Spotify.
and everything. He insulted the audience. That's the joke. These are the jokes, people. They're such a cringy bunch of little creeps. Why would anyone want to watch that? And I know, you know, between them, because they've been on Twitter forever, they have millions of subscribers. But let's see what their current is. Last time I looked, they had about 7,500 people who had subscribed to this on Twitter.
You mean who had viewed that video? That tweet?
No, who had they set up a handle
they set up
on
a Twitter
Twitter
account. Oh, okay. All right.
And they had 7,500 people who had signed up to it last time I looked.
So yeah, Russell is going to get the updated subscriber count to the Strike Force 5 podcast. They're also, I guess the Spotify boycott is off. I guess that's canceled now because they probably have some deal with Spotify to monetize the podcast, and so they're pushing traffic to podcasting, even though to the Spotify platform, even though that's obviously Joe Rogan's platform, which I would bet I don't know this for sure because I don't watch. And Colbert really copyrights that show hard, so that's why like people in our space never make fun of the Stephen Colbert show because they'll just take the videos down.
We would do that. We would do that constantly,
right? But it's kind of off our radar for that reason. But I would imagine Colbert had some pretty choice words for Joe Rogan during that whole Spotify ordeal. I guess they're back on that platform. The other thing is, if you just take a listen to the audio.
Force 5 is the name of our podcast. Subscribe to it now.
I mean, the audio
Spotify
is such garbage.
or wherever else you get
and that microphone that Myers has, that's the same microphone I have. That's the Shure MV7. You know, there's nothing endearing or folksy about bad audio. You know, it doesn't take that much money to get the audio right. We get the audio right when the microphone's pointed in the correct direction. You know, aside from those minor oversights from time to time, I think we get the audio pretty good. But yeah, the whole thing just has this very, you know, bubblegum and paper clips sort of vibe to it on purpose, even though they could clearly afford to soundproof a room.
Oh, you meant me, Jimmy. You meant me, Jimmy.
Right,
Look how helpless we are without a crew.
Right, exactly.
We are going to have such intelligent things to offer without writers about current events. Only moderately worse than what we say with writers. Right. Okay, so I could be wrong about this. I'm not going to say that I'm the most technical person, but I know how to do a search engine. I think that became such an embarrassment that they took it down.
Off of Twitter?
I cannot find Strike Force 5. Them individually have the video up, but there was a Strike Force 5 thing that was getting completely torn apart because everyone was pointing out. First, it was like they had 5,000 subs. Then they had 7,500. So it might have become such an embarrassment to their brand that they actually took it down. because I can't find it
I would imagine
now.
that could be a good decision if it's getting that brutalized and that ratioed.
Well, and then if you looked at the comments, everyone was just ripping it apart.
Well, the thing is, it just doesn't really make sense to promote a project like this on social media because the people most inclined to know who you are and care who you are the people who haven't transitioned away from TV to the internet, right? So if you go on, like the social media audience is really the least likely to give a shit about you and the most likely to troll you, right? When you try and launch this. And so that's something to look forward to. Hey, you know what? I don't know if they're going to, this is not CBS's podcast. So maybe on the bright side, once they get the podcast started, we'll be able to make fun of it a little bit because we would make fun of Stephen Colbert every week if we were allowed to. The reason why you don't see any of these late night shows get like lambasted in the indie media space is because the networks all copyright them very, very closely. They don't sue you, but like they'll block the video in certain countries. They'll claim the ad revenue. So it becomes a situation where we just can't. But maybe now that they're on a podcast, we will get to take the piss out of them every now and then. That'll be fun.
And really, can you imagine how many horrible, dumb, ridiculous takes these 5 fucking morons are going to come up with when you stick them on a podcast with no supervision? This is going to be an endless source of material. Right. This is going to be so degrading and humiliating for them. They're going to be so frequently ratioed. My prediction is they give it up within 6 months.
So the guy who I would say, if we had to rank them, I would say the least offensive to me is Fallon because Fallon's just kind of an apolitical guy. You know, every once in a while he'll toe the party line on something. Hey,
he got in trouble with libs for having Trump on and not giving him the Orange Man bad treatment.
Right. He's just a goofy comic, so I don't really, think much about him. Myers, kind of same thing. Kimmel, little bit more obnoxious, but he's had his moments, like that whole thing where he made a healthcare push because of his sick kid. That was valuable, I think. But then the worst are obviously Oliver and Colbert.
Well, but he was also the one who said the unvaccinated should be left to die.
Oh yeah, they all said that. They all.
But he did a whole bit about that. I think if a vaccinated and unvaccinated person shows up at the hospital, you're having a heart attack, you come right in. Oh, you didn't get vaccinated? Well, good luck, Wheezy.
Yeah, that was him. There was a whole montage about that I wanted to play on the Patreon show, but I could never find it. So yeah, no, he's had his terrible moments too. But Colbert and Oliver really consider themselves like political thinkers. There's a self-importance about them that is especially nauseating. And also the fact that both of them used to do good work, which kind of signals that they know better, that they really are just rank sellouts. I
don't know about that. I think in the end they were always shitlibs at heart. And once Trump got elected, like so many people, it just became just Trump derangement syndrome. Like, I don't think, as with, say, Krystal Ball, that they know better and they're just grifting. I don't believe that. I think they're surrounded by people who think this way. I think that's their social class. I think that was always basically where they lived. And when Trump got elected, that just became their identity.
Yeah, that's possible, for sure. For sure. Folks, we're at 571 in the YouTube chat, and we are at
we're going to get to hit that maiden?
We're at 76 now in the Rumble chat, so if my math is correct, we're about 30 or 40 away. Let's get to 600 in that YouTube chat. Let's hit that like button to get a crowd in here. Please like the stream, subscribe to the channel, follow the channel over on Rumble, share the stream, tweet that shit out so we get some more people in here so we can get an Iron Maiden serenade this morning. Extra Bulla, thank you for the $5, my friend. Hope you guys are springing for bacon, egg, and cheeses and bodega coffee for this new morning gig. I got the home coffee today. I woke up a little bit late today. I mean, late for me, which was 6:45. But we were up late last night. The thing about this is when we had to do the patron show, and then we had to spend another couple hours prepping this last night. So we didn't get to bed till pretty late. So it was a quick turnaround.
we were up texting back and forth, prepping exhibits until like midnight.
Yeah, especially because fucking Elon has done something to the Tucker videos, which we had to figure out a workaround for. So that really cost us about 45 minutes. Fucking piece of shit. Yep. Patrick Donahue, thanks for the €5. Hit the like, folks. Yes, hit the like, folks. And thank you for the donation, my friend. Thank you guys very much for your support. Super chats are super, super helpful. They are what make these morning shows possible. Not enough coffee for Clopin DD this morning. That's right. Courtney was up with us last night in the patron show. If you were at the patron show last night, put in the chat what you thought of it so that we can get some more people signed up at patreon.com/do dissidents. That's the best way to support the show. So if you're the kind of person who kicks in 3 or 4 super chats per show, kick in 2 or 3 super chats per show and put the rest of that cash in the patron pool. This way it doesn't cost you anything extra, and you get to censor-proof this operation and make sure that we can sustain anything that happens to us on these precarious big tech platforms on which we rely so much. So patreon.com/do dissidents, dodissidents.substack.com. Even if you cannot sign up as a paid Substack subscriber, sign up for free. It's just an email list. You'll get alerts as to when we go live. For example, if you forgot we were on this morning, as maybe some of you do, because it's Friday morning, it's a tough thing to keep track of, right? It's middle of the day. You'll get an email. An email went out at 8 a.m. this morning saying, hey, reminder, we're live. So when you get to the office, close that door, turn the AC up so that the boss can't hear you, and turn us on your laptop, because we have a very PMC audience that works in air-conditioned offices with bosses in suits coming around checking on them, right? But also, if you're out driving...
That's only 7%.
Right.
83% are in prisons.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
They're guests of the state.
If you're driving an Uber, make sure you hook that Bluetooth up and put on the Do Dissidents podcast at 9 a.m. every Friday morning. Eric Rousseau, Howdy the Bull is exactly the fudge round eating fatso Anthony was singing about. I am a Taurus, so I love this story. Yes, what a great story. What a fun, feel-good story. It's a good,
fucking welfare cheating
story.
bull.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I just want to give a little update on the fundraising situation. For those of you who missed the last show, we hit our goal with GoFundMe at exactly the right time, because we closed that fundraiser down in solidarity with the Gray Zone, who has been very unfairly penalized by GoFundMe and is having their funds withheld. And so we're in the process of finding out where to go. I've been in touch with our friend Pasta Jardula, who, by the way, is on his way to Maui this weekend to do some on-the-ground reporting. So that will be really interesting to see his findings when he comes back. And we're actually going to have him co-host the show here. He's going to be the first guest co-host during Russell's departure. Russell will be departing, but he will not be absent from the show. Russell will just not be doing the Friday morning shows while he's away. So Russell will still be on the Sunday shows and the Wednesday shows, just not the Friday morning shows. So we'll have guest hosts lined up. Paz is the first one, and that works out great because I'll get to ask him about his trip to Maui. So that'll be a fantastic show. That'll be Friday the 8th. But yeah, we are looking at replacing GoFundMe with one of these other sites. I still have to get exact details from Pasta. Apparently, Give Send Go did not crush his recent campaign fundraiser, but they apparently did mess with them when the Convo Couch raised funds to go to Cuba. And so I'll have to see if they ever paid him out. I didn't have a chance to follow up with him yet, but I will take a look. Apparently, it wasn't. Whatever they did to him wasn't enough for him to tell him to go fuck themselves, because he went back for this last one.
I would imagine if they didn't give him his money, he wouldn't have gone back.
I would imagine that too.
So we got to be over 666 now. Right?
Yeah, we're way over. 623 in YouTube. 623 in YouTube, 81 in Rumble. So we are over 700 this morning. Thank you guys. Wherever you are, hit the like button and hit the subscribe or the follow button. That is very, very important. Thank you guys very much for your support. Paul Chu, not interested in a t-shirt, but for being a patron sub, can I get a car that can seat a cow? We'll have to create a tier for that.
We have to, that's the $1,000 a month tier.
That's the $1,000 a month tier. Exactly. You got to really, really kick in for that. Yeah, Patreon members at the $15 and $30 a month tier get a t-shirt. So if you want to up your pledge, you can get one of these cool Do Dissidents t-shirts. And then the shop is coming online. The shop is coming online in the near future, which will be linked to the YouTube channel. So right when we're live, we'll have a store open right underneath us. So we'll have a little merch tent set up right underneath the screen that you can get all your Do Dissidents Christmas presents. You know, what a great stocking stuffer, a Do Dissidents
Be the
t-shirt.
first one on your block.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the hoodies now because it's hoodie season. We actually have some nice little zip-up hoodies and things like that. So, yeah, it should be a lot of fun. Very much looking forward to bringing that online. Franklin Worsham, I think you guys misunderstood Colbert. He's a character actor. Today's committed to corporate shill. Not joking. This is what is happening. Yeah, maybe he is just an actor.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
That could be. I always
I
thought that was a weird fit for him because to go from like, you know, Ali G type personality where you're clearly not yourself to then break that character and try to be yourself sort of as a talk show host always seemed like a bit of a stretch. It didn't seem likely to work, and in my opinion, it hasn't.
I think my perspective is colored from the fact that I've been surrounded by people in the business all my life, and they're like that. Those are their politics. It is very, very, very rare that you meet somebody in that business, in dramatic arts and entertainment and the arts in general, who are not passionately devout shitlibs. Really, they're the worst of the worst.
But speaking of passionately devout, Colbert is a passionately devout Christian. He's a very religious Catholic guy. Yeah. And so, you know, maybe there is something to what Franklin is saying.
Maybe.
Yeah. Who knows?
I don't think so.
We'll take a couple more of these, and then we'll move on. Charles H., thanks for the $5. Appreciate that. The Kyle downfall is so disheartening to me since he was who got me into online media in 2012. Wow, so you're an OG indie media consumer. I wasn't even watching YouTube in 2012. Forget what the hell I was doing all day. Do you think he is trapped or willfully in a bubble?
He lies. He straight
just a liar,
out lies.
Right.
So there's no way to say with Kyle what I'm asserting with Colbert, that he's misguided, that he actually believes what he's saying, because, you know, I mean, Colbert, we don't really watch him, but I haven't seen him say anything that is just completely counterfactual based on how libs understand reality. Whereas Kyle throws out numbers and facts that you would have to know what the truth is in the first place to even come up with that lie. So there's no way to interpret it as he's not lying. So at that point, you're just on the grift, man. I mean, what else can you say about that? If you're willing to go on the air, and as somebody who does this is part of why I have felt when we've covered this really strongly about what he's doing. I'm very disgusted by it because I just can't imagine, because that's a trust that people put in you when they watch your show. And you have to honor that and honor the people who watch you and take it seriously. Like, doesn't mean you're always going to be right. That's out of your control. You're going to have a bad take or a wrong take once in a while, but you can control it being your honest take. And he's not living up to that. He's literally going on the air and lying to his audience according to the narrative he's trying to construct. That guy's just a fucking douchebag, man. He's just scum, Kyle.
Well, we'll demonstrate some more demonstrable falsehoods a bit later. We are going to get to that in due time. In the meantime, Russell, you got that cowbell handy? We got a nice donation from Martin here.
Snap.
Thank you, Martin. Appreciate that very much. Thank you, guys. Well, thank you, Martin. And this warrants you a cowbell. Ringing of the cowbell.
Come on, howdy doody. Get in here.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. The call of the bull. Not a Rumble rant or a super chat, but Big Cat's Corner over on Rumble says, was a great supporter stream last night. Well, glad you enjoyed it, my friend. Glad you enjoyed it. Thank you for being there. And yes, to get access, dodissidents.substack.com, patreon.com/dodissidents. That's where it's at. In fact, now that we are allowed to post links, I will post the link to the Patreon right in the chat now that we cleared that up. So thank you guys very much. We are going to move right along. We got some more stuff to cover today. So
I could have used a little more cowbell.
A little bit earlier in the show, for those who are watching the clipped version of this on YouTube, Russell recommended a book about the CIA. And you ask, well, what does that have to do with the programming on today's live stream? Well, it surfaced on Twitter a couple days ago. The internet's an amazing place, man. Like, people who are online will just find everything because people went back 20 years to find footage of an old hardball forum during the 2004 Democratic primaries. This was in 2003 in the run-up to those 2004 primary votes, and found some footage that is kind of interest now. So the first of these two clips is of Mayor turned Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg. This actually showed up during the 2020 primaries. Here's Chris Matthews doing a very cordial and polite town hall with Pete Buttigieg, who he does not fear will execute him in Central Park if he becomes president. That's why he gives him very chummy treatment here. Yes. He plays this video. Let's take a look.
We're waiting for on our program right now. This is not the first time that you've been on Hardball in a live event. In fact, many years ago, you asked a question of a presidential candidate who visited your college, Harvard. Here you were back in 2003 asking Dick Gephardt about young voters.
Congressman, why are you the only presidential candidate not attending tomorrow's youth-oriented Rock the Vote forum? And do you think young people's votes matter in your campaign?
Oh, nailed him.
That's why I'm here tonight. And I've got to be in Iowa. I had a preset meeting that I've got to go to. I got to win Iowa. I'm going to win Iowa, so I'm going to be in Iowa tomorrow night. But I talked to young...
Fact check, Dick Gephardt, in fact, did not win Iowa.
Okay, you know what I have? You know what I have in my possession? I have a few copies of a New York Post headline that became very infamous at the time that Kerry picked Gephardt as his VP.
Oh, really? And that ended up being wrong, obviously, because he picked John Edwards.
I have those as collector's items.
Interesting.
Today.
Interesting. Yeah. Could be worth something someday.
People everywhere I am. I've got lots of young people on my campaign, and maybe I ought to
he was a rock
now.
star.
When I was
the
in
country
college,
had Gephardt
Jack
fever
Kennedy
back in
was
2004.
Really
I don't know if you guys remember that.
You couldn't go to the arcade without seeing kids with their Gephardt buttons.
Politics. So I just want to say to all of you here, get involved in public life. Give back to your country. Don't just take from it.
All right. So Pete took his advice. That was the laugh there from Alfred Newman in the left.
You know, what's really interesting is you look at people like Pete, and it's almost like they come out of their mama's vagina as bloodless androids. You know, it's like for a 14-year-old to be that uncool, to be that much of a, yes, and do young people have a place in your campaign? Like he's already lost whatever human soul he may have had.
Well, he had to be a little older than 14 there because he was at Harvard. And he was, I think,
he's
37.
at Harvard.
Yeah, he was 37 during 2020. So I
thought they were
19.
both like
children. No, they're like 18, 19 college age. Yeah, still, they're young. They're kids.
I mean, he reads exactly like he reads now.
Oh yeah.
There's nothing interesting in him.
Are you attending Rock the Vote tomorrow? Do you care about young voters?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Like if there had ever been any human quality, it's gone already by then.
All right. Okay, so we got Pete there. All right. Not that surprising. Pete ran as a Democrat in 2020. All right. They showed footage of him at Harvard, 16 years prior, asking Dick Gephardt a question. This next piece of footage, though, is from the same events. Al Sharpton was also running for president in 2004, and he was at that hardball town hall, and he fielded a question from someone who you might not expect to be in attendance, Vivek Ramaswamy.
Good. Reverend Sharpton, hello. I'm Vivek, and I want to ask you, last week on the show we had Senator Kerry, and this week and the week before we had Senator Edwards, and my question for you is, of all the Democratic candidates out there, why should I vote for the one with the least political experience?
Well, you shouldn't, because I have the...
Now, first of all, why should you vote for any Democrats? I thought you were this sort of, Trump with no baggage kind of guy. A little suspicious here from Vivek Ramaswamy. Fed, CIA. That's what we think about Pete. That's what we think about him. This was a plant. This was a setup. Hey, we know he has some Soros connections. He took a grant for some program that they designed for immigrants into the country that's been going around. I think that's a little bit of
children of immigrants.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And so, whatever you feel about that, now here he is asking Al Sharpton this question. So look how people change, right? Not just Vivek, but I actually think, the Gephardt answer was boilerplate bullshit. But when you talk about, we talked a little bit earlier on the show, we talked about how Colbert is sort of a shadow of his former self, whether you think he was acting before. Certainly John Oliver, shadow of his former self. Al Sharpton is currently a shadow of his former self, because Sharpton, for whatever you think about Sharpton had real skill back in his day. Real skill. He was very, very good on the microphone, even as a candidate. Even during those debates, I remember him doing very, very well. Look at the answer. Look at how Sharpton does a nice sort of jujitsu here when pressed about his lack of experience.
Candidates out there, why should I vote for the one with the least political experience?
Well, you shouldn't, because I have the most political experience.
He was also funny. Sharpton also had a good sense of humor back then. I think he was genuinely funny. Like, he actually had a lot of talent. He really did. Now he's just, another talking head on a Trump derangement syndrome network. But back in the day, he was good. I'll play the rest of this in a second, but go ahead.
Well, this is why any fat comedian knows not to lose that weight, because your humor goes with it.
Your humor goes with it, exactly. Not funny. Right. Nothing funny about a handsome, skinny guy, right?
No.
I got involved in the political
he actually looks healthier
movement when I was 12 years old.
As a guy who's not a healthy at any size guy, I got to say, it seems like the weight worked better for him.
He looks a little sickly now without it. Yeah,
He does.
He looks a little frail.
Yeah. And I've been involved in social policy for the last 30 years. So don't confuse people that have a job with political experience.
That's a good line, too. See, look at it, owning the room.
Head of some local bureaucracy has a job in Cambridge. That doesn't mean that they have political experience, and it doesn't mean they have the experience to run the United States government. So I think that we confuse title holders with political experience, as we have seen with the present occupant in the White House. George Bush was a governor and clearly has shown he doesn't have political experience.
Look at how he owned Vivek Ramaswamy there. He really shut that down. Like I said, Sharpton had skill back in the day. And he also had a real establishment critique, a real anti-establishment critique, as you see it right there. Well, just because you have credentials from the Ivy League, just because you're an office holder, just because you got a big title, doesn't mean you have the right experience, I'm an activist. I'm a grassroots guy. I have more relevant experience than these two. He was very, very skilled.
No, Sharpton back then was one of the best. I remember that campaign well. And, I often say with the Bernie campaign, there's been a Bernie in every election that I can remember. And that year it was Sharpton. Sharpton was the Bernie of the 2004 campaign. He was that outsider that you love that can't win.
Then it became Dean as it got closer. But I would agree with you. Sharpton was really the purer form of that.
He was. And Bernie, the difference was really that he could win. Always in the past, it was, gosh, I wish a guy like this could win. But in the end, I got to vote Kerry because he's the one who could win. Bernie was the first time you could make a credible argument. This wouldn't just be a gesture. This guy could really win the whole bag of marbles. This guy could actually be the fucking president, because it was, people were angry enough to go and vote for someone like Bernie Sanders. That wasn't the case then. So Sharpton was that. He was that guy. Wow, man, that would be so cool for him to be president, but I'm going to vote for Kerry. He was so sharp. Speaking of Colbert, Colbert used to do those interviews where he would, basically troll the interviewee, and he would throw out these things that would throw them off and, make them pause and make them look silly, right? He did that to Sharpton, and Sharpton was the only person I ever saw who was able to turn it around back on Colbert, because he was that quick with his improv,
right?
That you could throw him something completely unexpected, he would just roll with it. He was fine. He got the better of the exchange.
He was great, and that's why a couple of weeks ago, I think it was a few weeks back, we played the clip of him saying, what was it? It was some reference to the founding fathers. You know, imagine George Washington trying to overthrow the government or something like that. Like, that's what was so jarring about that, because I remember this Al Sharpton. I mean, I was young during that campaign, but I was radicalized by the Iraq War. So I was actually following that 2004 Democratic primary quite closely. And I remember being pretty impressed with Sharpton. I remember thinking,
he was
I mean, I
great.
was just a teenager. I didn't know much about politics. So, you know, and I figure it would be hard for Sharpton, given his, you know, Tawana Brawley background. He had a lot of baggage. I figure it would be a tough sell for the country. But I'm thinking, I don't really see much wrong with what Sharpton is saying here. I don't know why he's having such a hard time. You know, young, innocent Jew boy that I was at the time. I didn't know the full context of why it was impossible for him. But I remember being very impressed. And so now when you see who he is now, it's completely, it's like, wow, man, this guy's really fallen far.
Oh, yeah. In the debates, he was head and shoulders above anybody else on that stage. And what felt really edgy about his campaign was he had a critique of the Democratic Party. He had a kind of critique of the economy that standard issue Democrats didn't have. By that time, they're deep into Clintonian neoliberalism, and here he is offering this critique of Clintonian neoliberalism. And again, you know, I mean, everyone, certainly myself, was still very steeped in that, you know, Newsweek, New York Times way of looking at things. Yeah, Sharpton, he's really great. So let's get serious now, right? Everyone thought that way about him. But yeah, no, he was great in those days. And you know, it's interesting because we do this now really as our job. It's you know, this gig, we're not working in a factory here, but yeah, like to talk about current events like this, you got to kind of be into it. You got to be excited about it if you're going to be on the mic this much talking about current events, just doing what me and Keaton do. Can you imagine doing this, not believing in what you're talking about? I think that's really the difference. You know, I'm making a joke about his lap band surgery or whatever the fuck he did to lose all that weight. But really what you're seeing is he was a happy warrior then.
Right.
Now, I mean, what a drag it would be to have to be on the mic that much and just like formulate stupid shit. Like, can you imagine Washington overthrowing the government? And you wind up saying something that dumb for somebody who at one time had been such a brilliant man. By not actually being invested in what you're talking about, you're just trying to say shit that's going to be red meat for the dumb libs who watch MSNBC. You've been hired to literally be a political actor, in the true sense, to just say all the Republicans bad. And for a brilliant man like Al Sharpton, who, whatever you think of him, he was so smart in his prime, to have to go to work every day and be like, yeah, and so today Trump, it's just going to take all the joy out of you, right? And that's how he looks desiccated, both physically and spiritually.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about Tucker in a little while, but I sense like now that he's off of Fox News, you see him.
It's the opposite.
It's the opposite, right? Because at Fox News, you know, he'd drop a couple of interesting segments a week. You know, every few days there'd be a Tucker segment that caught our eye. Oh, that's interesting. When you're at Fox, just like when you're at MSNBC, most of what you have to do is what the bosses want you to do, which is red meat to the Fox News audience, which is not as interesting as interviewing Viktor Orbán or traveling to Hungary, or, you know, doing some of the other stuff that he does. Certainly the January 6th thing, which got yanked by Fox News, right? So it's that opposite thing where he seems more alive now, right? So yeah, it could go both ways. Pat Donahue, thanks for the $10. Appreciate that. R.E. Kyle segment, that's coming up in just a moment. That's next on the list. What a sanctimonious goon. It wasn't just the message, but he has a habit of talking down to people like they're slow. Yes, despite contradicting himself from only a couple of years ago. Yeah, that... Russell and I were talking about that right before we went on. Just the attitude behind that too, just so incredibly smug. Like you're talking down to Cornel West, who's probably twice as old as you and 100 times as wise as you, has done 100 times more than you'll ever do. Yeah,
and this is what it all comes back. While propping up Mary, fucking exactly. Who are you to talk about anyone's political choices?
Exactly. But we'll save it for the segment that's coming up next.
We'll save it, yes.
Lennon, Patrick Stewart, don't trust the liberals. They will betray you. Oh, and a YouTube link. Second clip for your audio library. Okay, cool. Thank you for that. It's always nice to add stuff to the soundboard.
Right.
Thank you, Scrabtree. Appreciate that
like
very much. Indeed. Yes, that could be a fun one. Charles H., thanks for the $2. Where's the put on sunscreen tier? Yeah, we should make due dissidence sunscreen, although that's probably illegal.
Probably.
There's probably
because,
regulation.
as we know now, it's regulated.
It's regulated very, very tightly. Maybe we'll join AOC and have them loosen the sunscreen market so we can hawk due dissidence sunscreen through the Patreon. Indeed.
Yeah, maybe we've got this thing all wrong.
Okay, so Laugh says for the Cuba gig, they got nothing. Give Singo eventually refunded the donors. Wow, interesting. Laugh is what tipped me
And
off
then
to
they
that.
used it again?
I'm surprised Pasta would use it again if they screwed him the first time.
We got to talk to him. We got to get the inside dope.
Got to see what the hell's going on here. Because why would you use a platform that already shut you off? I mean, I wish him the best with it. I hope it works out. I don't want to get him in trouble with him or anything. But yeah,
I mean, on the one hand, we're not going to Cuba, right? I mean, not. For me, if I went to Cuba, it wouldn't even be political. It would be to go to the Hotel Nacional, where the mob had its big Havana conference in 1947.
Right. Yeah, that would be fun. That would be fun. All right, so it's looking like we may have to use the other one after all. That gives you great customer success. Not customer service, customer success.
I mean, look, in the end, it wasn't much of a chunk that we had to pay.
Yeah, it's a small fee. It's a small fee. So that's the good thing. All right, we'll take some more super chats in a few minutes, but folks, we covered Krystal Ball's response to the Bernie Sanders Cornel West sort of rift, which took place over the weekend, where in response to Cornel West criticizing Bernie for backing Biden, Bernie kind of fired back at Cornel West, saying that he disagrees with Cornel's run and that the progressive community needs to unite around Joe Biden for 2024. Krystal gave a pretty awful take on that, and so my theory is as follows. She got home from work that day and told Kyle, I blew it on my Cornel Bernie take. So listen, babe, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to go into my office and I need you to record a take that's even worse so that I look good compared to you. I need you to do that for me. And Kyle said, sure thing. Of course I'll do it. First, let me change into my glow-in-the-dark polyester polo shirt, and I'll get right on this for you. Anything for you, sweetheart. And I think this is Krystal's office, because if you take a close look at the books behind him, it's a shame I can't do a cursor thing on here. But if you look on the left side of the frame, 1, 2, 3 shelves up, there's a book on tarot cards. There's also a book behind him called Transcend. And then if you look over his left ear, it's our right, directly to the right of his left ear, near that plant, there's a book on magic tricks. So maybe this explains their support for Marianne. Maybe they're into that shit.
No joke. It probably does. Like, Krystal is one of those crystal people. You know, I mean, in a way, you know, Freakonomics did a whole study of a father who named his kids winner and loser to see if your name actually determines your destiny. In her case, it probably did. You know, her parents thought they were being cute. They named her Krystal Ball, and she wound up being a fucking flake.
Yeah, maybe.
She wound up being all new agey. That would actually, honestly, that would explain this support for Marianne Williamson and its seeming unshakability. Like, it would explain why she, even with what it's costing her in terms of her credibility, why she won't give it up. Like, if she's a true believer in the Course of Miracles shit, that would actually explain why she won't let this go.
The other possibility is that this is Marianne's house. That's the other possibility. It could be.
That is the other possibility. It could be.
Robert Nichols says, good eye. Yeah, well, the reason I looked is because, I'm sorry, I mean, I don't mean to be mean to the guy, but Kyle doesn't seem like the kind of guy to read this many books. So I'm thinking, what books is this guy into that he has all these books around? And then I realized, oh, yeah, a book on tarot cards and a book on magic tricks.
No, he's the cabana boy at Krystal's house now. I'm sure they moved into her house, right? He said he's probably going to be voting in Virginia, right? So they're definitely in her house. That's where the Louis the 14th room was, where they first really did their cringy endorsement of Marianne. Yeah, no, I'm sure they're in her house. I'm sure she told him to do that with his hair, and I'm sure she told him to put on that fucking shirt.
Put on the shirt.
There is no way that he picked that shirt. There is not a man alive who has not had his balls removed and put in a jar who is going to pick that fucking shirt.
I mean, it is a men's shirt. It is a men's shirt. I think he's
Not a-
doing it for
not a-
her.
it's
I think
not-
he
it's not
recorded
a-
this.
It's not a. Yeah, I mean, it's a man's shirt. It's not a man's shirt.
My theory is that he did this to make her look good because she looked bad, and somehow he did make her look good. His take is probably even worse than hers. So let's take a look at this. Oops, what did I do? I muted it. There we go. All right.
I mean, can't
My
make it any
apologies.
worse.
Here we go. This will work.
Now, on the Cornel West front, look, understand something. I would like to talk to him and ask him, what do you think you're doing here? Like, what do you think you're doing here?
What do you mean, what do you think you're doing here? He's doing what Jill Stein did. He's doing what Howie Hawkins did. He's doing what Gary Johnson did. Joe Jordan. He's running a third-party candidate for president. Like, this just immediately, this, like, suspicion. So what are you up to here? And yes, as I'm sorry, I forget who gave us the super chat. I think that was Pat, said, yeah, just this really condescending attitude from the jump. Like, who are you to fucking lecture Cornel West? What are you doing? What do you think you're doing here? Do you really think you're going to win?
He just, whenever he does these monologues, he just goes on with all this fucking nonsense. It's just, as you say, like, you look at all these books and you know, well, this can't be his because Kyle's too dumb. Like, if he read this much, his takes would be more informed.
I mean, unless you're reading about tarot cards and magic tricks, then it makes sense.
Well,
This would be your
yeah,
take.
fair,
Yeah.
fair, but his takes are not informed by that.
Exactly.
Think you're doing here? Like, what do you think you're doing here? Do you actually think you can win? Because you can't, because we don't have ranked choice voting. We still have first past the post voting. So in your
Okay, well, I'm not going to belabor this point because I've made it 1,000 times. The way to get ranked choice voting is to vote third party. The Democrats and Republicans are never just going to give you ranked choice voting. They're never going to voluntarily surrender their own power. If you start voting third party, then Democrats and Republicans, depending on the district and the dynamics of the race, will see an opportunity in third party votes to pick up votes on the second rounds. Now, without ranked choice voting, they view you as a spoiler. They will never just give you ranked choice voting. So the idea that we have to wait until we elect the right Democrats or the right Republicans who are kind enough to grant us ranked choice voting and then we can vote third party, that doesn't make any sense. That makes zero sense. That's why we hardly have any districts, municipalities, city states that have implemented ranked choice voting because it's extremely difficult for obvious reasons. They're not going to surrender their grip on power voluntarily out of the kindness of their heart.
Listen, you can vote third party, but you have to wait until Congress votes to cut its own salary.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's like what that's saying. That's what
I mean. It's
exactly.
it's a typical Democrat argument against doing anything that threatens the establishment, right? You can't do it because the system is set up this way, and until we make this systemic change that's never going to happen, you can't make any effort to create systemic change by actually undermining the establishment that supports that system. You can't do it because Republicans.
Right. You just have to sit back and say, maybe someday, right? Maybe someday.
Right. That's it. That's it. We
What's your
shall overcome.
Exactly.
highest goal that you
Mr.
think
fucking
you could achieve?
movement.
Yeah, right. Well, he gets to that.
What's your highest goal that you think you could achieve? Is it the 5% for the Green Party? Is that what it is? So that you can get matching funds and make it more viable? But again, I hate to tell you, the Green Party and no third party will be viable unless and until we get ranked choice voting. Because until that point, there's always going to be this perception you're just a spoiler candidate.
Okay, first of all, as I just said, you're not getting ranked choice voting until you start voting in third parties in great enough numbers for the major two parties to see that they need ranked choice voting in order to pick up votes on the second round. Number two, if you poll above 5%, you are a viable party. You're not a winning party, but you're a real party. You get matching federal funds, which means you can grow exponentially at that point. It is a significant thing. Now, all of a sudden, 5% is no big deal. I'm sure there have been times when Kyle, and I know people in that Kyle adjacent sort of faction of the online sort of indie left commentariat have said 5% is a big deal. Now, all of a sudden, 5% is no big deal anymore. Well, 5%, you're still not viable until you get ranked choice voting. So now that's not a reasonable goal anymore. Since fucking when? Since when? Since you became a Biden bro, since you married up into a $50 million net worth, or since you got involved with the Marianne Williamson campaign? Since when is this not a goal worth pursuing? Because that's never been anybody's take in this space. Everybody's always had 5% as a real sort of milestone for a third party. Now that we have a candidate who's capable of getting us there, now all of a sudden, well, it's not really a good idea anymore. You just see how unbelievably full of shit these people are.
And what's really the difference here from the take you would get from Rachel Maddow?
Of course, right.
What's
exactly.
the difference? Chris Hayes would tell you the same shit, even
Right.
though he's another one who was whistling a different tune back in the day. You know,
Right.
Chris Hayes, before he had an MSNBC job, used to actually talk about how to threaten the system and how they're never going to let you create that kind of change. Even, what's the other scumbag they have? Chris O'Donnell?
Lawrence O'Donnell. Is he still
Lawrence
with them?
O'Donnell?
Maybe. Yeah, I
Is
don't
he
know.
still on there?
Yeah.
That's actually on video. He had a pretty famous
Oh, yeah, years
monologue
back, yeah.
years back. So, you know, but now they all got their mind right. All these people got their mind right. So, you know, again, I don't understand why you don't just get on the winning team. Like, why even be all indie media? Like, why? Why? Just fucking watch CNN, man. Get with the people with the fucking money who win. Like, why are you going to watch this loser?
They're a good-looking couple. They can get a gig on TV.
Sure.
Easily.
Sure.
And by the way, if we get
With
into a
that
general
shirt?
election
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
Biden versus Trump, and Trump ends up winning because Cornel West got 5% of the vote or something, or 3% of the vote, and he gets blamed, that's going to set the movement back so much. People are going to look at leftists as spoiled brats who are just getting in the way.
No, it will not. No, it will not. It might set back the social democrat, progressive democrat left, but it's not going to set back any real left movement. Left movements in general grow once they flex power, right? And so if Cornel West gets enough support to swing the election, that is a flex of power. That's good for a movement, not bad. When a movement, this so-called movement that these people talk about now, when you place, as Howie Hawkins placed in 2020, and I voted for Howie Hawkins that year, when you finish with 0.75% of the vote and you don't influence anything, that's bad for the movement. That's bad for a real left movement. You're going to actually try and gaslight the audience into believing that Cornel West cracking 5% is going to be bad for the left moving forward. You're actually trying to make that argument.
Well, and I said this with Krystal. What left are you talking about exactly?
Well, that's what.
left?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
You're not left. The people you represent at this point are not left. You're a cosplayer. You're just cosplaying, and it's increasingly absurd and transparent. Like, what a fucking movement. You look at your shirt. No movement produces people who wear shirts like that. I'm sorry. No credible left movement would have members with shirts like that.
No revolutionary chooses seafoam as the theme color of their show and records something like this in a, like I said, sort of glow in the dark polyester polo.
Now,
You're gonna get your mind right, and I mean right.
Kyle got his mind right.
Now, that's totally separate from the question as to whether or not the spoiler effect actually is real. But there's going to be a perception that it's real, and everybody's going to blame the left for Donald Trump winning.
What
Good.
left?
Now,
What
I don't
left
want
are
that
they
to
going to
happen. I know
blame?
you guys-
Well, what
That would be
left?
pretty funny if they blamed you.
Right. But also good.
That's what we're
Right?
going to
Isn't
do.
that the idea?
We're gonna blame you. We're going to tell them it was his idea.
Right, it was Kyle's fault. He undermined Joe Biden by supporting Marianne in the primary. That's what happened. That's what happened. But also just the cowardice of saying, well, maybe the spoiler argument's not a good argument, but they're going to say that about us anyway, and so we have to, cower in fear of being smeared? The left has been smeared for as long as the left has existed.
Right.
If the
right.
left is
Like,
afraid
what
of
is-
being smeared by corporate media, then why even have a left? Why not just do sports commentary?
What on earth could you possibly do that would be legitimately left that would not invoke the ire of the
Right.
media and the establishment?
Exactly.
That's
Right.
the whole fucking point.
Right. We
That's
have to
the whole
build a
point.
left movement that stays on good terms with MSNBC, because if we challenge them too much, they're going to blame us when things go sideways, and we can't have that.
And
just
that
incoherent.
really, I mean, that's, you're making a joke, but that is literally
the
the
subtext of what he's
argument.
saying, yeah.
That is exactly what he's saying, right? The only thing that makes strategic sense is to build a left movement that doesn't piss off Nancy Pelosi. That is
Right, exactly.
There is no such thing. That is impossible. And at that point, again, take off the shirt, go back to your natural hair color, and just be a fucking Democrat.
Right. Exactly.
Guys don't want that to happen. So I'd love to ask Cornel West, like, what exactly are you doing here? Now, if he was going to run, he should have run as a Democrat. Why do I say that? What's he polling at now? 1%?
No.
Mayor
No.
Williamson is barely getting media coverage.
And you know that because you're a fucking liar.
Okay, so this is what we were talking about earlier. We have to play this, and then we have to talk about this, because this is where it just gets brazenly dishonest. This is not the first time Kyle has done this, but here we go.
What exactly are you doing here? Now, if he was going to run, he should have run as a Democrat. Why do I say that? What's he polling at now? 1%? Well, Marianne Williamson is barely getting any media coverage, and she's still at 10% or more.
Okay, those numbers are both wrong. Those numbers are both just absolutely, factually wrong. We covered
And I'm
this in
sorry,
the last
he
show.
knows it.
Yes,
He knows
of course. Cornel West's last poll, he was at 5. There was a poll before that, he was at 4. The first poll of the cycle, he was at 6. There aren't a lot of polls that include Cornel West now, because most presidential polling doesn't include third parties. There are 2 listed on the Real Clear Politics average. They're both Emerson polls. One has him at 4. One has him at 5. So actually, Cornel has never, to my knowledge, polled under 4 when included in a poll. I'm not stating that for a fact, because there might be some poll out there, but I'm saying in the major polls that have registered on the sites that aggregate polling data, Cornel has not been below 4. On Real Clear Politics, there's now 1 at 4, 1 at 5. First poll of the cycle, he was at 6. Marianne, on the other hand, who he claims is polling at 10% or more, there's a lot of data on this because she's running as a Democrat. So here's the last, I didn't take the time to count these, looks like a good 25 polls over the past 4 months. Marianne Williamson's average support over the last 4 months, 6.3%. She has never, counter to what Kyle said, placed higher than 10%. And she has only hit that 10% number once here and once here. So she's actually cracked 10% twice in the past 4 months, and he's telling you Cornel's at 1 and she's at 10 or more. Those are just absolute lies. Now, it gets even worse than that, because he's, of course, conflating 2 things. He's conflating Democratic primary polling with general election polling. I'm going to let him talk for a few more seconds, and I'll explain why that is dishonest in and of itself.
So she's at 10 times what Cornel West is, simply because she decided to run as a Democrat.
No. She's at 10 times what Cornel West is, even if he decided to run as a Democrat. That is completely wrong. Let's take his lies at face value. Let's say Marianne Williamson were at 10% and Cornel West were at 1%, right? How many people vote in Democratic primaries? Roughly 30 million, right? Clinton got, 17 million to Bernie's 13 million in 2016. So let's use that as a rough number. 30 million people vote in Democratic primaries. How many people voted in the last general election? It was about 160 million. So 1% of 160 million is 1.6 million. 10% of 30 million is 3 million. So even if Marianne were at 10 and Cornel West were at 1, that would not mean that Marianne would have 10 times the support of Cornel West. It would mean Marianne would have twice the support of Cornel West, because she'd be at 3 million and he'd be at 1.6. That's if Kyle's numbers were accurate, which they are not. They are wildly inaccurate. As it stands, Cornel West is polling at about 5 and Marianne's polling at about 6, which means actually, in terms of real votes, in terms of real support, Cornel is actually polling better than Marianne Williamson, because Cornel's polls are aggregated for a general election electorate. Marianne's polls are aggregated for a primary Democrat electorate. So even if his numbers were right, which they are nowhere near right, he would still be deceiving his audience.
And even if his actual numbers were equivalent to hers, but he's telling you 10%. She's what, 6.3 average in polls. He's coming in at about 5. Right. So this guy just entered the race. She's been plugging away for months. Even if they were both equivalent polls, he's at about what she is, even within those terms, even on those terms, assuming he were running as a Democrat. It is amazing that they're so willing to go down with this ship. Like, honestly, when all of these staff reports started coming out, it became clear her polling was only getting worse as time went on. I kind of thought they would just quietly stop talking about it. It's amazing to me how they keep doubling and tripling down.
Exactly. No, they will not let go. Here we go.
I don't know what the strategy is. If you don't have ranked choice voting, if you don't get rid of first past the post voting, you're just doing a virtue signal fest. That's all it is. Like, I believe in good things. Okay.
Go ahead, Russell. I know you have something to add there.
So what exactly are you doing? You are relentlessly propping up. Let's set aside the quality of your fucking Topanga Canyon guru, half-ass L. Ron Hubbard knockoff candidate. Okay, let's set aside that bullshit. You are backing a candidate in a primary with a party that we know that even with a viable candidate, they rigged the process to ensure that there was absolutely no way that he could become the nominee. And this is a case where you have an incumbent president where they've told you in no uncertain terms, go get your fucking shine box. We're not having a primary. We're not having a debate. There is no process here. There is no world in which they're going to entertain the idea of a primary. So what exactly are you doing? You're not virtue signaling? There's a more meaningful purpose to what you're doing, because as my esteemed colleague has often pointed out, Cornel West, provided he can take the heat, will be on the ballot in November. Your candidate will not. So what is the aimless virtue signal? Even if you don't agree with the goals of third-party voters, they will actually have an impact that is impossible with a campaign that can't possibly be on the ballot in November because the party you're running in will not allow it.
Exactly. No, that's a great point. And as you said, that assumes the Marianne Williamson campaign is a remotely serious campaign. But as we know from staff who has left and published a letter, 7 staff members have said she's not even interested in getting on the primary ballot, much less the general election ballot. She doesn't even want to collect the amount of signatures that would be necessary to get her on the Super Tuesday states. Maybe she's pushing for New Hampshire, even though New Hampshire is going to disqualify whatever delegates actually go to the convention because they're probably going to buck the party and go first, which is against DNC rules. Maybe she'll have enough for New Hampshire. I doubt that even at this point. From what we've heard, it doesn't even sound like she's on pace to do that. But she's not even going to be on the primary ballot.
It's mythical
the
stuff.
General ballot. Right, exactly.
I'm really curious, once Williamson succumbs to the inevitable, how are these guys going to cover the election? Like, they just support Joe Biden and talk about Trump? I mean, do they just become full MSNBC at
Looks
that
that way.
Like,
Certainly
what else are they going to
to me.
do? What else are they going to do with the politics that they've claimed to have? Like, it seems like they didn't really think this through. Like, they're trying to maintain this indie credibility by not backing Biden, by backing some bullshit candidate. But what do you do when that candidate's not running anymore? Like, how are you even going to pretend to be this counter to the Democratic Party left commentator when the choices become Biden and Trump and you've painted yourself into this corner?
Exactly. That's an excellent point. Even the Vanguard guys are smart enough not to paint themselves into that corner. The Vanguard guys are saying, yeah, we're for Marianne for now, but we will be for Cornel in the general, right? They're at least giving themselves an exit ramp, right? So when the Vanguard guys
may
have more
down the
foresight
line,
than you do. Well, no, but I mean, even
I may reconcile with my son.
Right.
We might have an on-air, like Jerry Springer style reunion with me and Zach.
Me and Zach, right. Exactly. Even they have the foresight to know, okay, when Marianne is no longer in the game, we can't just go to Biden. Our audience ain't going to go for that. So they're saying, yeah, we'll support Cornel in the general. Even they have the foresight that apparently Kyle and Krystal do not. Let's let him finish here.
Great. And then what? If you actually want to win, if you actually care about getting the country to change for the better, there's an intelligent way to do that and not a way that self-disenfranchises you from being taken seriously.
How does it self-disenfranchise you? As Russell just explained, as we've explained several times on the show, come November 2024, when the actual deal goes down, Cornel West's name will be on the ballot in at least 40 states. Marianne Williamson's name will be nowhere. So who's disenfranchising themselves? Who? Them or you?
Yeah.
So I don't know what he's thinking. I would love to ask him, like, what exactly is the goal here? Is the goal to get to 5%?
I would absolutely love to see Cornel interviewed by Kyle and have him try and ask these tough questions. That would be amazing.
And he would really be too dumb to field the responses.
Right.
Like Krystal can field the responses.
Yeah, she could hang in there. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Does he understand that the only way the Green Party or the Libertarian Party or any of these other parties would be viable is if you get ranked choice voting first? Does he understand that? I don't know. I don't know. Everybody in this conversation is kind of annoying the shit out of me because the real answer at this point in time is
feelings mutual,
we are having a primary. There is a candidate who represents Bernie's values, and Bernie is refusing to support them.
Let me just play that last part 1 second here.
What's going
because
on? Does he
the
have
real
rings
answer
on?
At this point
The
in time
real
is
answer.
we are having a primary.
What is
there is a
what
candidate
is
who
going
represents
on
Bernie's
his finger
values.
there? Oh, I see.
It's a highlight. It's a vape thing,
Yeah,
I think.
yeah.
Yeah.
He's vaping. All right.
At this point in time is we are having a primary.
No, we're
There is a
not.
candidate who represents Bernie's values. and
We're not
Bernie is
having a
refusing
primary.
to support them.
No, he refuses to support them because there is no primary. The Democrats have said there is no primary. They're not facilitating a primary. There's no debates. If you try and jump the line with some New Hampshire stunt that you've been pumping for the last fucking 6 months, they're just going to disqualify New Hampshire.
Oh, and that's going to change everything. That's
Right,
going to
exactly.
turn everything around.
Right.
Hey, dipshit. You're talking about pissing off the establishment and pissing off the mainstream media. What the fuck do you think their narrative is going to be if, in theory, you made Biden look bad by winning in New Hampshire? What do you think the corporate media is going to say about that? They're empowering Trump. They're empowering Trump. Look, they're making Biden look bad. They're undermining our successful incumbent. Right? What do you think they're going to say about you?
Right. And look, Biden is not going to participate in the New Hampshire primary. So there's going to be this giant asterisk next to the New Hampshire primary that Biden wasn't even trying. Biden didn't even try to win those early states last time. You have to give Biden's team a little credit. It's not easy to push a corpse over the finish line. He actually has a fairly competent political team around him, which his predecessor obviously did not. You had the Jennifer Palmieri's running the Hillary Clinton campaign, the Huma Abedin with the husband laptop and all the bullshit. Biden's team is actually not a bad team. They can't be that bad if they push Biden over the finish line once.
Sure.
They know they're not going to set themselves up for embarrassment in New Hampshire. If New Hampshire is bucking the party, they're just going to say, we are not participating in this primary. Therefore, the result does not fucking matter. We already know the media is going to parrot that line for them at the top of their lungs, which means whatever happens in New Hampshire is irrelevant. It's irrelevant, both from a narrative standpoint and from a delegate counting standpoint, because those delegates will be disqualified if New Hampshire goes first. And so there is nothing happening. There is nothing happening. It's just a giant smoke and mirrors act that they're trying to pull. And now they're doing that at the expense of if they didn't want to support Cornel West, they could at least speak well of Cornel West so that, as Russell said, once the Marianne Williamson campaign implodes, they'll have something to do during general election season besides just campaigning for Joe Biden, because who wants to watch that on the internet? They can watch that on TV.
Right. Yeah, we covered this when we did that breakdown. I mean, Kyle already gets a fraction of his subscriber numbers that actually watch his show. Who the fuck's gonna watch on YouTube to see somebody give you the same take that you could get on MSNBC and CNN? Like that is not what people come to YouTube for. They come for an alternative to that point of view. And right now they're maintaining the illusion that they're offering that alternative by latching themselves onto this Marianne Williamson campaign. And maybe that's why they won't let it go. Maybe that's at core the reason, because it's the only basis on which they're claiming to be different from what you would get on cable news. Once that's gone, how do they even make the claim? It's really like watching a slow motion car wreck.
Indeed. Indeed. Zishan, thanks for the €5. Love you guys. See, a lot of euros coming in. Got the nice overseas audience today. Love you guys. Why do I feel like there's a portion of the left who is unable to criticize Jimmy, like when he pretended People's Party wasn't stealing money? Look, I interviewed
What are you talking about? I was talking about, I met Jimmy the other night. He grabbed my ass, that guy. Right, exactly. I talk, why, you didn't see that episode?
Yeah, I interviewed Nick Brana a few times back when we had the audio show. I was hopeful about the People's Party also for the same reason, that was probably for a similar thing that sucked Cornel in at the jump, was that I felt like these new third parties were needed because the Greens had already branded themselves ineffective losers, which is true to an extent, which is part of the reason why I think it is unfortunate that they failed. But I was all in for MPP also. I was very much in full support of the early moves that they made.
Well, and relating to what I was saying before, we all, and what Keaton's saying now, you can't be right all the time. That doesn't mean you're being deceptive.
Right.
Look, we have wrong
had
takes.
some.
A lot of people think I was wrong about DeSantis, and eventually Keaton's going to have to apologize to me on the air.
Exactly.
When DeSantis is the nominee, but does that mean he's being deceptive? No.
Well, and look, for all of their faults, of which there are many, right? I'm not going to sit up here and make excuses for the People's Party now. But they understood something which their convention indicated, which is that you need star power to get traction as a third party. That's why they had that star-studded virtual convention in the summer of 2020. If not for the pandemic, that would have been an in-person thing. And it was the People's Party, apparently, that convinced Cornel West to run, right? We can't forget about that, right? It was the People's Party that nudged him into the race, and then Chris Hedges convinced him to switch. It wasn't the Greens that convinced him to do it, right? The Greens didn't reach out to Cornel West, as far as I know, in the early going. That was Nick Brana. That was the People's Party, because they understood. They had experienced media people running their media. I knew the person running it, fairly well. We did an interview with her, and we were in touch with her several times. Very, very nice lady. I won't say her name now because I don't know if she's associated with them anymore since they've had shakeups, to put it mildly. But they had pros running certain things, and it showed because they were able to get a lot of eyeballs on them. And so I think they had the instinct that if we're going to run a candidate, it can't be a Howie Hawkins or a Joe Jorgensen or a Gary Johnson. No, it has to be someone big like a Cornel. And they got Cornel to say yes, and that facilitated the switch to the Greens. And now the Greens have somebody for the first time ever who can actually crack 5%. They're on pace to do it right now. So that's what I would say to that. But thank you for the question. Dino Pantaloukas. That's a nice name. I like that name. It's a Greek name, right? Cool name. Pantaloukas, you're going to be in Greece. I'm new to your channel.
You got a place for me to stay out there?
Yeah. Loving the content. Keep it up. Happy Labor Day weekend to all. Thank you, Dino. Appreciate that very much. And thanks for finding us here. And please hit that subscribe button. Cool Blue 71. He's been around a while. That's the thing with the Dim Party. Anyone appearing outside their corporate establishment faction will not be Team Blue's presidential nominee. Of course. Exactly. Dave Delarai. Krystal got all her money by using The Secret first when she wished she had $40 million. Yes, then she filed for divorce, and wow, The Secret works well. I remember The Secret.
I mean, my big question.
Do you remember The Secret? That was huge.
Oh yeah. Well, it's very similar to The Course of Miracles. It's the same basic thing. Yeah, that's yeah. I mean, my question is, did she prenup him?
I mean, I think rich people prenup a lot.
I'd be surprised because look, especially for her, she's like, well, I'm not going to let him do to me what I did to him.
That's true. Yeah, I don't know what their finances are in terms of all that, so I won't speculate. But yeah, thank you for the donation. Kyle and Krystal signed a 1 billion-year shill contract with the Williamsontology organization. Yeah, Williamsontology organization. Thanks, Skill. Cool Blue, Guide to Democrats Voter Outreach Program, with recent examples by Krystal and Kyle: voter shame, voter bully, and of course, voter gaslight. Yeah, that's all that is. I mean, it's pretty amazing. And as Russell said, there's going to be a time very, very soon where they're going to have no choice but to just be all in for Biden, because they're already burning their bridges with the Cornel people. How are they even going to cover the campaign in a favorable light, or even in a fair light, even in an impartial light, when you're already lying about the guy's poll numbers and overly inflating your candidate's poll numbers. I mean, as we demonstrated, that was just blatantly dishonest. And this is a pattern. You know, when Kyle did the so-called takedown of the so-called hit piece that came out about Marianne abusing her staff, he didn't put the article up on the screen, and he just blatantly
that was the smoking
the
gun.
words of the article itself, right? And he didn't show it to you for that reason, obviously.
Right. I mean, that was the smoking gun to me. That demonstrated this is not an honest disagreement. This is not being misguided. This is not being in a bubble. This is literally, he read an article and decided to go on the air and lie to his audience about what the article said. And he purposely didn't put the article on screen so that they wouldn't know that what he's saying is in it is not, in fact, what's in that article. That at that point, I mean, there's no question. He just lies to his audience and has no qualms about that. He has no respect for his audience.
Right. Indeed. Cool Blue. An actual left movement in the Democratic Party has turned out to be even less than a bowel movement. Yes. McDougal, thanks for the $4.99. Cornel West voters have more in common with MAGA voters than the evil uniparty Krystal and Kyle simp for. Well, that's part of Cornel's theory of the case as well. That's why he says he's going to try to appeal to some Trump voters as well. And the interesting thing about that Emerson poll that came out is it was 46 Trump, 44 Biden before you introduce Cornel. After you introduce Cornel, it became, I believe it was, I'm going off memory here, but I believe it was 44 Trump, 39 Biden. So Biden lost 4 points once Cornel's name was mentioned, but Trump also lost 2. He probably didn't lose those 2 to Cornel, but he probably lost some of those 2 to the undecided because the undecided percentage grew once you add Cornel in. So it's not bullshit to say that Cornel makes it more complicated, not just for would-be Biden voters, but also would-be Trump voters. That data bears that out. Now, that's one poll, obviously. We need more data to actually see if a pattern establishes in that way. But the way Cornel has talked already is that he plans not only to siphon votes from Biden, but to siphon votes from Trump as well. And most of his support, in theory, if the plan works, is going to come from would-be non-voters, because that's the real answer. Right? It's not all about trolling the Democrats and tanking the Democrats. It's also about activating this sleeping giant of working people who have given up. It's about getting them to engage, right? And so I hope that answers that for you. All right, we'll take a couple more, then we'll do our last segment, and then we'll take the rest of the Super Chats. By the way, folks, we got a Rumble Rant earlier. We will read Rumble Rants on the screen as well. Holistic Radical, thanks for the $5. My views are very anti-capitalist, revolutionary, and my spirituality has new age aspects, both and not either or. Yeah, look, that's fine. I mean, you know, I don't hold it. I wouldn't hold it against someone if their politics were good, if they were into that shit, or, you know, if they ran third party and they were into that shit, I wouldn't care.
No. Well,
I said if Marianne ran third party, I would wish her the best. I couldn't support Marianne. I could not support anyone who's wrong on the Russia-Ukraine war. So that's my red line. So I couldn't support her based on that alone. But if she were running as an independent, I would say, I would wish her well. I couldn't support the candidacy, but I would wish it well. So yeah, sure. I mean, that's not disqualifying to me. It's that plus everything else.
And look, I think very much as when you talk about, say, Christianity, right? Very often, if you're going to be critical, because on the one hand, we're going to get into this Viktor Orbán thing. And I think his saying that his country is rooted in a Christian tradition, I think that's legitimate. But at the same time, I might be very critical of certain types of Christians or certain manifestations of Christianity. It's the same thing with the New Age thing. I mean, I have some beliefs that would have overlap with that. I believe, but it has overlap with a lot of schools of thought. The idea that your thoughts manifest, I believe that, but that's a strain in Buddhism as well, right? And it kind of relates back to quantum physics. So there's a lot of overlap in these schools of thought. So yeah, man, I wouldn't personally, and I think I can speak for Keaton too, just slam people with those beliefs. I share some of those beliefs, but there's a certain kind of rich lady with those beliefs. And I think if Krystal has those beliefs, she fits that bill pretty well.
Yeah, I would say that makes sense. That makes sense to me. All right, I'll take a couple more of these just because they're related to this segment, and then we'll go on to the final segment of the morning. Pete Sweet, thanks for the $5, my friend. They got to sell something, like a car dealer that can only sell their brand. Democrat, got no Democrats, got to close the dealership. Yep, I mean, at the end of the day, I think that's more or less right. A lot of these shows, yes, they're progressive shows. Don't forget, the shows that became big during the Bernie movements are progressive shows, but they're progressive Democrat shows. Because don't forget, a vast majority of Bernie supporters, both in 2016 and 2020, ended up falling in line.
Right.
And that's what Nick Cruz has said also, and it's a good point. It's a point that was lost on me for a while until he said it, which is that this sort of next crop of indie media shows came out post-Bernie. So it was sort of like, you know, in the wake of that. I mean, we were an audio show during the Bernie campaign, but we didn't really start building a big audience.
Second one.
Right, until after the second Bernie campaign. So there's a big difference there. There's a big difference between a post-duopoly left show, obviously, and what these guys have, which is a built-in audience of a few 100,000 Democratic voters, which is, you know, it's hard to just alienate that audience without feeling it. And that's part of why they don't do it.
The Democratic voters who want to pretend to have an oppositional relationship to the party that they, in fact, belong to.
Exactly. And this is a good follow-up to that point. Tusker, thanks for the $5, is the fake left always seeks class peace instead of class struggle. Yes, that's a good way of saying it. Absolutely. Right? We don't want to say anything that's going to make them mad because then they're going to blame us when things go badly for them. And we don't want that. We don't want conflict. We don't want struggle. We want peace.
Right.
We want diplomacy.
Right. And they never answer the next question. So what?
Right.
So what? So they'll blame you and?
Yeah, and? That's what gives you power.
Right.
Their blame is what gives you power. Nobody blamed Howie Hawkins for anything because Howie Hawkins didn't build any power.
Right. Nobody blamed Dave Chappelle because I think I was the only one who wrote him in.
Right. He only got one vote.
He only got one vote from me.
And it was a white vote. Dave Chappelle tanked among black voters in 2020. Who could have seen that coming?
That's it. You know, everybody thought his support was principally going to come from 3 people in the black community, but even they didn't vote for
from
him.
a white boy like Russell Dobular.
That's right.
All right, folks. One more segment today. Tucker Carlson has been in Hungary for a while. He gave a speech in Budapest, which we covered on the show last week. He also sat down with Viktor Orbán for an interview. We tried to pull clips from this. There's something wrong with the video file. I don't know if it's an accident or not, but there's something that wasn't working with the video. And so we're not going to take any chances trying to stream a video file that might be corrupted or encrypted or whatever. We just are going to play the audio from this with a lovely graphic that we made up for you. But here's Tucker Carlson talking to Viktor Orbán about the Russia-Ukraine war. This is a segment that deals with Russia's security concerns, about how Russia as a country, as a culture, values security and unity above liberties and freedom. So there's a real sort of interesting piece that he gets into about the values of that nation and why it is pure propaganda and pure bullshit to think that there's going to be a coup inside Russia or that there's going to be an uprising, they're going to overthrow the government and Ukraine is going to win. And then he gets into what sounds like, I think, the most ringing endorsement of Donald Trump possible, talking about how Donald Trump is the one man who can perhaps save the human race. Yes, you heard that right. You heard that right. Let's take a listen.
To keep together the country, because the country is very big. And there's a privilege of the question how to keep together the country and not freedom. Freedom is just another issue, second, third, whatever.
Let me just make this a little more clear for the audience because we don't have the setup. So he talks a lot in this interview about how America doesn't really understand Russia, that they should talk to people like Hungary who were actually occupied by Russia, who have a long centuries of experience with the psychology of the Russian people. And he's explaining here that, and this is a point I've made on the show about this war. If you look at Russian history, the idea that the Russians are going to give up is absurd. And I've had people bring up when I've said that Afghanistan, and that actually comes up in this. There's a big difference. Afghanistan is this remote place that was not part of their real interest. The juice wasn't worth the squeeze, right? Just like us with Vietnam. But when you look at the history of Russia's engagements when it feels threatened by its territory. The Russians have never walked away from that kind of a conflict. So this is the point he's making, like the way that the Russians think. And he says, it's not in this clip, he says at one point later, you think you know Russia because of the Cold War, but you don't.
Right, exactly. All right, I will start it over just so we have a good flow going.
To keep together the country. The number one issue, how to keep together the country, because the country is very big. And there's a privilege of the question how to keep together the country and not freedom. Freedom is just another issue, second, third, whatever. First, keep the country together. And that's generate a different kind of culture and understanding of politics. That's create a kind of military approach like they have. Always on security, safety, buffer zone, geopolitical approaches. It's not our culture, it's a different approach. It's legitimate to have that because it's their history. But we have to understand that we cannot beat them as we do just now. It's impossible. They will not kill their leader. They will never give it up. They will keep together the country and they will defend it. We finance more, they will invest more. If we send more technical equipment, they will produce more. So don't misunderstand the Russians.
So they're not going to get sick of Putin and throw him out?
Come on, it's a joke.
It's a joke. There you go. There you go. Now, you won't hear this in Western media. If you watch Sean Penn's documentary, Sean Penn says the exact opposite. Sean Penn says, no, Ukraine's going to win. It's just a matter of when and at what cost, right? So you tell me who knows this situation better, Sean Penn or Viktor Orbán? Whatever you think of Viktor Orbán. I know some people in the chat are saying he's a nationalist as well. Yeah, that's all true. It's not an endorsement of Orbán. But there is an analysis of reality that comes from a guy like Viktor Orbán that you're not getting from fucking Joyanne Reid and Sean Penn. I mean, it's obvious. It's obvious. How thick do you have to be not to understand that, right? Because the reality is right in front of your face. You can't win a war of attrition against Russia. Just look at a map. Orbán even says, look at how big it is, right? Part of the reason why they prioritize consolidation and unity over freedom, which his words, not mine, he said that's a secondary concern over there, is because of the vastness of the country. Right. This has been a challenge that Russia has faced since Russia was Russia, right? They're a landlocked empire with a very, very difficult terrain, pardon me, and so this has just been a reality for centuries now. What, you think Ukraine with some F-16s that we lend them is going to be able to fend them off? No, it's either going to be a global war in which tens of millions of people die, or at some point, Russia is going to win. And so what we need now is peace, which is what he says in this next question. So let's hear Tucker ask, well, if you're Joe Biden, what would you do?
So if you were in charge of NATO, if you were, say, Joe Biden, what would your next move be in the war in Ukraine? What would you do?
Peace, immediately. Call back Trump. That's the only way out.
And by the way, Hungary is a NATO country, right? So this is not hostile propaganda, right? It's a NATO country. So this is a guy just talking about, okay, what would we do now? Peace.
Next move be in the war in Ukraine? What would you do?
Peace, immediately. Call back Trump. That's the only way out.
Call back Trump. The only way out.
Call back Trump. Because you can criticize him for many reasons. I understand all the discussion, but
discussion, the porn stars pissing on his face, all that. Yeah, but at the end of the day,
the best foreign policy.
People do not understand in this country. This is what you do as part of marriage ritual. You piss on the face. You are not truly married until she piss on the face. People in the West, they did not understand this was a marriage ceremony. It was doing honorable thing.
Honorable thing, yeah. Running cover for the P-tape. That would be funny. All right, here we go.
The best foreign policy of the recent several decades belonged to him. He did not initiate any new war.
Yes.
He treated nicely the North Koreans and Russia, even the Chinese, He delivered a policy which was the best one for Middle East, Abraham Accords.
Yes.
So that was a very good foreign policy. He's criticized that he's not educated enough to understand the word. This is not the case. Facts count. And his foreign policy was the best one for the world in the last several decades I have seen. And if he would have been the president at the moment of the Russian invasion started, no, it would be not possible to do that by the Russians. So Trump is the man who can save the Western world and probably the human beings in the globe as well. That's my personal conviction.
All right, that segment just reminded me of like something from Team America. There's only one hope for the world. You mean Donald J. Trump?
Right, exactly.
At the same time, can you say he's wrong relative to what we have now?
No, do you really trust Ron DeSantis or Joe Biden to wrap this up before it gets really catastrophic? I mean, it already is really catastrophic. I hate to put things in those terms. Even the New York Times was forced to admit 500,000 dead and injured already in a year and a half with no sign of slowing down. But what he talks about there, Trump, he respected the North Koreans. He got around well with the see. I feel like there's a Western privilege, there's an American privilege where we can all just hear across the ocean with no hostile power on our border surrounding us, pointing their fucking missiles at us. We take for granted a sort of relative peace, which allows us to cast judgments on other countries, right, for how they do things, be it Russia, China, even Korea, right, or, any country anywhere else, right? We can sort of look from a distance and judge because we don't feel threatened. When you're over there and you're, you have the Middle East and Asia and Europe all right together with no oceans, no natural barriers, and you have the United States, this imperial power with bases all around the world, they actually can't take for granted a relative peace and a relative stability.
Right.
So they actually really value the fact that they had a United States president who shook hands with Kim Jong-un. Whatever you think about Kim Jong-un, that means something to people who are just in a more vulnerable position than we can ever really understand here in New York, right? And so I think that's where he's sort of coming from there, and that's a perspective that you never hear. You just never hear that. In American outlets, they did not report on the fact that Orban later in this interview says that the U.S. could stop the war right now if they wanted to. It's our war to stop. It's not Ukraine's war to stop. It's our war to stop because he mentions, it's very obvious, it's not fucking rocket science. With no money for weapons and no weapons, they can't fight the war. And that does not mean Ukraine implodes. It means Ukraine is forced to the negotiating table with Russia and a peace is brokered that saves hundreds of thousands, soon to be millions of lives. We're at 500,000 already, with no sign of it slowing down. So at the end of the day, do you want, as Donald Trump said, people to stop dying? That's really what it's about at the end of the day. Because politically, as he says here, there is no way they can win. They can't win. That's a fantasy. That's a lie. That's propaganda. So who are you going to trust? Sean Penn and Rachel Maddow? Or him? He seems to know the situation a little better, I think. I could be wrong.
Yeah, we were going to show more clips, but Elon, at the same exact moment, and maybe we'll do something about this on Sunday.
Oh, we're definitely doing something on Sunday with Elon.
Apparently, they just changed their terms of service to now they can take your fingerprint information, your facial recognition information. So yeah, we're gonna.
Well, they put in place the old terms, which they can ban you if you become commercially unviable.
Right.
Like if you're a liability to advertisers, they could throw you off now. They got rid of that at first, and now they brought it back.
Right, and they're bringing back the I forget what it's called, trust and safety group that was really the subject of the Twitter files. They're bringing that back.
Right.
So fuck Elon. But I just want to make a point, speaking of censorship and propaganda. So yeah, they encoded this so that you can't download it and share it now. That's why we had to do it this way. We were going to get into some other clips because there's a really interesting clip where he says that it's up to America to end this war. America could end this war tomorrow. It's not really being run from Kyiv. What was very interesting was, okay, so we can't get the clip. When I went through different newspapers to find that quote, this interview is very widely covered. It's in the AP. It's in the Washington Post. That quote is absent from all of them. What they focus on is, Orban, who they want to play up as a fascist. Orban says bring back Trump. That's the whole spin of it. And they really don't get it into the substance of a lot of what he says. So not surprisingly, where was I able to find this? Daily News Hungary. That's where I was able to find this. Okay, so
again, just want to reiterate: Hungary, a NATO ally. They're a NATO country, right? Right. So that counts for something, especially when they're taking this attitude, because this is going to make Ukrainian membership into NATO much harder, obviously.
Okay, so Ukraine has already lost its sovereignty. It has no money, no defense industry, and no ability to manufacture military equipment, Orbán said. It receives money from us also, mostly from the Americans, and also military equipment, he added. If the U.S. said that it wanted peace and the war must be stopped, there must be a ceasefire and talks should be started, it would happen the following day, Orbán said. As to why the Americans don't want this, we did not get an answer even at the NATO summit. Okay, so and this is a quote that's being suppressed, because look, it's not like this is just of interest to people like us. Like, that's a major statement, right? So why don't you see it in any of the American and American-aligned outlets? Because they don't want you talking about that. They don't want you having a conversation about that.
Indeed. And so it was a great interview. It was only a half hour. I recommend that you guys watch it. Really interesting stuff.
And also, I mean, this is something, because we try to keep these shows tight, so I decided not to get into it. But that's why I pulled up the Douglas Murray book. His articulation of his country, how the country works. I mean, everybody in this space. And look, I'm not an expert on the internal politics of Hungary or Viktor Orbán. I'm just going by this interview. So yes, there could be a lot of information I don't know. I've never really dug into it. But he very credibly articulates, well, how could I be a Putin puppet? And Tucker kept showing pictures of him being arrested by the Russians. He said, in Hungary, because of our history with the Russians, it would be impossible. You could never get elected if you were perceived that way by the Hungarian people. They would never elect someone they saw as being a lapdog to Putin. That having been said, we have economic interests that overlap with Russia, and I'm going to do business with them. He had a critique of the liberal class that was also very interesting, because he talked about, because Tucker asked him, you're a NATO member, so why are you so on the outs? And according to Orbán, the Biden administration actually put money into the election to try to defeat him in a recent election in Hungary. And, basically he said, not in exactly these words, but he basically said the liberals, they have this very rigid intellectual way of doing things where if you disagree with them or you're wrong, you're just wrong. You can't just have a disagreement about culture and values. You're evil, you're wrong. And he said, Hungarian people, we have a common history. We're very united because nobody else really speaks our language around us. We've been able to hold together as a unique people for all of these centuries. So we're very bonded together. We're very unified. And the tradition of our culture, the background of our culture is Christian. And it's become unfashionable to say that. Now, it basically makes the point, until very recently, that would have been a normal position for a Western country. But these Western countries have moved in another direction, and they can't just let that be. So I would really recommend watching that interview. I thought it was very interesting.
Yeah, and I just want to clarify, because we said this we got into this a little bit last time with the Tucker speech in Hungary about, liberal judgments on Christian, nations that identify that way, as opposed to nations that identify as Muslim. It's not that the West has not been extraordinarily cruel to the Muslim world. Of course we have. So we're not talking about the West in general. We're
talking
about
a
strain
reason
of liberalism and the rationale of the liberal class. Yes, indeed. All right, we have some more super chats. We also have a caller who I'm seeing for the first time in the chat room here. Did you want to say hello? Give me a thumbs up if you want me to admit you. I don't know if you're just listening. All right, thumbs up. New caller here, JF. What's up, man? What's your name?
What's
or
up?
Do you want to go by JF?
Mon nom c'est Jean-François.
Oh, wow.
But for the Anglophones, JF, I go by Jeff for the Anglophone.
Jeff, did you just sign up, Jeff? Because we just got a page.
I just signed up, yeah.
All right,
I
cool.
just signed
Taking
up for you
advantage of that
guys,
right away. Yeah,
and
I just got an alert
just-
on my phone. Jeff signed up for
Well,
Patreon.
I was listening to your selling the Jews for Jesus thing, and it was a level of comedic genius that I haven't seen in a long time.
I mean, we should be on that podcast with those five. Right?
Well, when you were selling Lance the Surf down the road there, that was
on the last show, yeah, the Lance's late term abortion fund on Give Send Go, yeah.
Yes, my God, the level of transgression, you fuckers are going to get canceled very quickly. Anyway, so I figured
we're already there, man. We're already there.
Not with your help, not with your support.
I had to give you some money before you got canceled.
Right.
But now that you know, je suis francophone, je suis pas anglophone. Okay, understand? I'm not anglophone. I'm francophone.
Right.
We'll now move over to the fact that it's very easy to forget that I'm francophone. But one of the things that you guys will like was that I actually participated in 1985 with my own theater company in the final nail in the coffin of the 1960s. And I say, I'll do the short version. I met Rado and Ragni. I was doing a production of Hair, and I had the show scooped from me and lost all my money as a result because they sold it to a big time guy who was going to take it national, except they fucked it up so badly that it bombed. Right. So that part was good. But when I sued them, I didn't get any money because they fucked it up so badly. The judge said, well, I see your point, but there was no money made. So what are you going to do? You can't get damages.
But you lost your money. Where are you, Canada?
I know.
Yeah, where are you from?
Yeah, je suis Québécois, tabarnak. I told
beautiful.
you New Yorkers have a border with us, right? You do know that.
I love
familiar
Quebec.
with that?
So where are you? Where are you?
We know that.
Are you in the city?
I know. I'm just joking.
I'm thinking about buying a house in Buffalo.
Are you in Quebec or Montreal or?
Well, I'm 15th generation francophone, but I'm now living in Eastern Ontario.
Okay, got it. All right, beautiful.
But I was doing a production of Hair, and I met Rado and Ragni because they heard the cast singing, Aquarius, and stopping and starting, and they looked at each other and went, "Hey, that's not a recording." And they, as typical New Yorkers, because the door to the studio was actually locked because it was a weekend, they fucking picked the lock and came up and fucking talked to us.
Oh, wow.
So we got nice publicity saying Hair meets its makers. But then I got the show scoop from it. Anyway, then they fucked me. Anyway, I have a very similar trajectory to what you guys are now currently doing. So we should talk at some point offline, and I can tell you all the mistakes you're going to make because I've made them all. I started writing for Counterpunch after the Iraq War in 2003. I set up an environmental NGO called Post Carbon Toronto, and for 12 years we put on 100 public lectures with research scientists, geologists, because we were doing the two sides of the thing. We were doing resource depletion as well as environmental pollution as well as climate change. Because if you don't take care of what's going into the gas tank, nobody's going to fucking vote for your climate change fucking agenda. Turns out I was absolutely right about that, as we're finding out right now. Anyway, so we can talk offline at some point. I don't want to dominate your show here. I just wanted to say hi. I just wanted to give you a chef's kiss for selling Lance down the road like that. And I'm sure we'll talk some more. And I want you to send me an email so I have your email so you can read my latest article because it's called The Contrarian Colonel and I. Okay. So it's about Douglas McGregor. It's about Douglas McGregor and his band of merry pranksters and what they're doing right now. I don't know if you know this, but Judge Napolitano, the wackadoodle libertarian fellow from Fox News, now has his own show. Yeah. But he has Ray McGovern on. He has Larry Johnson on. He has Scott Ritter on.
Yeah.
He has
I saw
Douglas
that episode.
McGregor.
I saw that big panel episode where he had McGovern and Ritter.
He does it every week. He has Alistair Crook. He has by far the best War and Peace show online. It's not close. It blows Amy Goodman's Democracy Now! Out of the water. Right. So I've been watching all these guys. So I wrote an article about it that I'd love to send you. Anyway, keep up your fantastic work, and I'll say goodbye for now.
Cool, man. I will send you a message through Patreon, and I'll send you my email, and then we can go back and forth. But thank you so much for signing up, and thanks for calling in. Great to meet you.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Ciao. Beautiful. All right, that was a fun call. All right, let's get...
I think he's underestimating us. We will make mistakes he's never thought of.
Right, yeah, exactly. We're unpredictable in that way.
We're just the guys.
Charles H., thanks for the $2. Will the real smug shady please bow down? Very good. Man, all the M&M stuff keeps coming for Kyle. The wealth of material there. Joe Paradise, thanks for the $5. I just wish Kulinski was on a show that took super chats. Yeah, he doesn't live stream much. He insulates himself from that kind of feedback, right? It's hard to troll a guy who doesn't take super chats and doesn't live stream.
And that's why.
Exactly. Artie Blarty Fart Blast. That's an interesting name. Thanks for the $2.99. Appreciate that very much. Yeah, JF just signed up today and gave us a call. Josh Rose, thank you for the $5. For as much as Kyle likes to call people narrative humpers, he sure is raw dogging the hell out of that ranked choice voting narrative. Indeed. And it's a completely bullshit narrative. He's just filibustering. It's just like Russell said during the segment, Democrats, liberals do this all the time. Oh, yeah, no, we'll get universal health care down the road. We can't do it now, right? It's the same thing, right? It's a policy aim that they have no intention of actually getting. And they say, well, until we do this, we can't get that. And that creates a permanent sort of stalemate, right?
He's doing it for the movement.
Indeed. Doing it for the movement, right. I just wanted to take this. D. Barker, Quebec City is fabulous. Yes, it is. That's a beautiful city. Quebec City is gorgeous.
I'm working. This is like, I'm trying to get everything done before I leave. I'm working on that Canada monologue furiously. So I hope he stays a member after that drops.
Yeah, I'm sure he will. It sounds like he would agree with a lot of what you're saying. Yeah, it sounds like he's going to dig it. All right, we got a couple more Rumble rants to take before we get out of here from Bonzo Beans. Buongiorno, Rome tip, Museum of the Liberation of Rome, tiny museum on the Nazi occupation of Rome.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
An original prison cell with writings on the wall from local inmates. Wow, that's wild. Run by volunteers.
Really?
Wow.
Motherfucker, why are you telling me that, man? Because already this is, even for somebody who doesn't have my obsessive tendencies, they warn people that it's very easy to burn yourself out because there's so much to see. The tendency is to try to see everything, and then you're just not going to enjoy anything, right? Because it's too much. There's only so much shit that your brain can handle. So telling me something else that's so super cool that I'm going to want to do, that was an evil thing to
Gotta make time. Russell's going to miss another show now because of that. It's going to be, I can't make it. I got to go here.
Well, I mean, the reason I'm able to do the show is because it's the middle of the night.
Right. Exactly. I fear for Kyle. This is Bonzo Beans as well. If his voice ever stops cackling like that of a 13-year-old boy, he may have to give back his keys to the mansion. Yeah. Oliver242. This is not a Rumble rant, but cheers from Hungary. Somebody watching on Rumble from Hungary. Look at that. See, I told you. Cool. International audience, especially on Fridays when it is daytime over there.
I told you simping for Orbán would pay dividends.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. It was a tough sell, but you sold it well. And Ellen says, I agree with our Francophone friend. The Jews for Jesus bit was comedic gold. Thank you, Ellen. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Ellen, are you in Morocco now? Are you on vacation? Didn't you say you were going on vacation to Morocco?
I don't think she's in Morocco.
She said something earlier about how it's hot in Morocco. I thought you were going on vacation.
Oh, yeah?
Soon. Yeah, maybe. I can't imagine why else you would be concerned with the temperature of Morocco unless you were there. If you were there, it makes sense. If you're there, I hope you're enjoying your trip. If
maybe
you're not,
she supports a mission.
I hope you're enjoying your time at home on this Friday morning. Folks, that's our show. We have had, Russell, because Russell did post-duopoly, so Russell did 6 shows this week. Saturday, Patron, Sunday, main show, Monday, post-duopoly, Wednesday, Thursday, and now Friday. This is my 5th show of the week, Russell's 6th show of the week. Russell's last show before he goes to Italy will be this Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern. We hope you can all make it there. That is our regular prime time slot. We appreciate you all being here this morning. Once again, you can go to patreon.com/DoDissidents and sign up to support this show. That is hugely helpful. You guys are the backbone of the show. We had 2 supporter-exclusive streams this week. They both went really, really well, and so we're very, very happy to be able to do those shows. Those are a lot of fun. You can get access to those as well by going to dudissidents.substack.com. If you sign up as a paid subscriber, you get the perks. If you sign up as a free subscriber, you get perks as well. Audio podcasts of every live stream, as well as alerts as to when and where and how we are going live. Thank you guys very, very much for being here. Pleasure as always. We will see you back here Sunday nights. Until then, be safe and be well.
Courage.
Please clap.